My name is Nathan Reynolds, and I just want to take a minute and first thank everyone that has been a volunteer and has been sacrificing their time, their energy, their resources to be here, and for Jax for organizing the event, and all of those who actually make this come to pass. Because like many of you, I am one of those people who, up until today, has only ever seen this kind of information from the comfort of my own home or my mobile device. But to actually see in person Barbara present is so encouraging to me, because I did not come into this walk in my life, in this strange path that I am on, without great trials and tribulations and persecutions. And there was a lot of pain that drove many people to make sacrifices to come and be in a room like this today. And because of that, it has changed the way that I perceive the world. And I was not born into a normal family. Most people's families aren't normal. I recognize that. However, everybody's got some funk in their trunk. You know what I'm saying? But my family was really a part of an organized criminal empire, and they engaged in Luciferian ritual magic as a means of gaining power, manipulating people, and influencing the minds and the wills and the emotions of those that they came into contact with. And so throughout my life, early on, I was introduced into the world of deception, compromise, coercion, and it altered my perspective for what makes somebody think the way they do. It altered my mind to see the world through a lens of predators as opposed to prey. And it gave me a way of thinking about society where everybody was actually out to get you. And that's real messed up when you're young, but here we are decades later, and the vast majority of people are waking up to that reality at some point, that the vast majority of those who are in positions of power and capabilities are sincerely out to get you. And you can go through that paradigm when you're young, like many of you who are raising your children and trying to give them the instructions about, hey, the reality of our world is far different than the facade that they're giving us on the good-looking storefront buildings that are hiding nothing but death dealers inside. But the sooner that we can get to a place in our life where we recognize there is something wrong here, the more of a chance that we give each and every one of us individually, and then our children or our children's children, opportunities to be spared the pain, to be spared the betrayal, to be spared from that incessant suffering that comes when you are so alone in this world and you're screaming into the night for a friend, for someone that could understand you and know you and understand the way that you think is not crazy, it's not madness, but in fact, it's purity of thought for the first time in your life. And that journey of getting to a place where I could see the world clearly came through a great deal of confusion. Because for the early years of my life, I was stuck in this world where I was being trafficked from house to house, where I was being raised by strangers and being shown that the way to go along, to get along, is to give up your free will and just give up. That never are you going to find freedom in this world unless you give in to the family's demands. That you'll never know true deliverance unless you surrender your sovereign freedom to us. Because you can trust us, right? We're part of the family. And that did something so bad to me that it made me become completely helpless. It was conditioned, learned helplessness. And so many of us are being lulled into a similar sense of slumber by very well orchestrated, designed, and engineered products, whether it's the food we eat, the water we drink, the clothing that we wear, or the things that we look on with our eyes. We are being perpetually bombarded by master manipulators who are designing a world of nothing but deception. And yet there's these oddballs who are out here on the far side of the stadium crying out, begging people to listen and regard what it is they have to say. And it is those often persecuted outcasts that I began to find a community in. I began to find that there was going to be someday people that resisted, people that did not give up, people that held their ground and refused to give in to compromise. And what I saw over the course of my life as I diligently observed these people, these mankind, these creatures that were so strange and alien to me, was those resistance fighters had grit, they had wherewithal, they had endurance. And it was that endurance that was necessary in order to break free from those cages that were maybe mental or physical or spiritual. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, I found the true healing that I needed was going to come when I surrendered. When I set down the violence, when I set down the revenge, the killing, when I set it down and I stepped aside and I began to call out to the Creator, I began to beg Him to show me the way out of this prison cell. I began to beg Him for help. And those first prayers started when I was a 7-year-old boy sitting on a couch watching a TV with an audience filled with tens of thousands of spectators as these super strong men got on stage, and they were ripping books in half and tearing license plates and bending bars of rebar, and they were called the Power Team. And they were this super powerful, yoked bros, some of the world's strongest men back in the early 90s. And they were just ripping stuff apart and showing people how strong they were physically. But then at the end of it, they talked about where real power, real strength came from, and it was through their relationship that they had with Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And for them, that was the man that showed them the way back to their Father and their Creator. And it was the redemption story that they were offering an invitation to. That was the first time in my life I saw power wasn't only found in those who knew how to summon demons. That power wasn't always found in the left-hand path. That true power could be found when someone surrendered their sovereignty and admitted, maybe I don't know what's best for my life. Maybe you do. Will you please orchestrate my life into what you intended it to be? And that little 7-year-old version of myself begged Him to make me powerful like Him. I wanted that power, and I wanted freedom. And I was desperate for it. I was so desperate, but you know what? Freedom was something that I believed in, even though it wasn't my sight, even though I still spent years and years and years in bondage. But into that moment, what came into me was hope, was faith. And what was given to me was a seed of faith that was so powerful, it would fuel me in the darkest of my nights, in the deepest of my sorrow, when I was absolutely beside myself, unsure of what I needed to do in order to get out of a situation and just survive the night. But I knew I could trust His word, and I could trust Him if nobody else in the world. And because of that faith, I was able to have the endurance to keep going and keep breathing and keep surviving. But that wasn't the only thing He had in store for me. I got stuck in a survivor's mind where all I had to do was just get through the next 5 minutes for the rest of my life. Because for me, my world was very short. But after I got out of the United States Army, I was given a second chance on life, and I was given this opportunity to seek my own path, to try to endeavor to become somebody other than the soldier that I'd always dreamed I would be. And what He began to do in me was to bring healing to my mind, but it had to start with a great sacrifice. Because, as those of you I'm sure are well aware, the United States military has ways of treating their veterans that are very, very well financed. And then there's all this other road that you can go on, which requires you to give up all of that, all the support, all the resources. And you know what? I'd had enough of all the pharmaceuticals and all the poisons they'd shoved me on and all the mind-altering drugs, and I didn't want anything to do with it anymore because the person that it made me into was a madman, was a monster. And so literally one night, I took this bag of medications that I had been given. There was like 80 medications in this bag, and I gave it to one of my friends, and I said, I can't have this stuff in my life anymore. I don't know what's going to happen to me, but I believe that God can heal me. I actually believe that. I actually believe that I didn't need all of these drugs to get me well, because what I was looking for was a promise that I found in His Word, which Barbara said earlier, that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind, self-control. And I did not have self-control in my life. I had a lot of fear in my life, and I was a very weak man. But I believe that most of that weakness was coming from the wrong source. That I believe the Father built me and created me like He created all these people around me to heal and to be restored. And I knew I could not do that if I kept masking the symptoms. If I kept taking those drugs and shoving that stuff in my body, I was never going to get to the root cause of what was killing me. My hair was falling out. I had irregular tachycardia. I was aging faster than I could even get my head around, and I did not know what else to do other than throw it away. I wanted it away from me because I recognized that this thing that I had in my life was unclean, whatever it was. So that's what I did. And you know what? Within a matter of a few days, my mind lifted. This fog, this perpetual stupor that I've been stumbling around in for so long, lifted. My hair stopped falling out. I stopped having all of these spots and lesions, and I stopped having this heart racing out of my chest, and I had this ability to think for myself a little bit come back. And I was like, maybe I'm not so stupid. Maybe I can do this thing. I was studying psychology at the time in Colorado at the University of Colorado at Boulder. And I began to think maybe this whole path that they're trying to tell me how we get people better is falsehood. And maybe the real cure is something far more simple. But I still began on that journey to keep looking for some way that I could find restoration. And onto that journey, you know what? The Father provided for me the greatest gift that He ever gave me besides His Son, which was a woman named Chelsea. And this woman came into my life knowing nothing about who I was. And I kept her in the dark well after I married her. Don't necessarily recommend that. However, it worked out great for me now. But I ended up marrying her, and she got to know me as one person named Nate, who was very happy and very joyful and could not be more free because of this new taste of freedom that was in my mouth when I'd finally let that stuff go. I was actively a part of the recovery community, and I was just on fire with excitement and joy, and nothing could keep me down. And so she married that man, and we got started. She was a residential nurse and worked in like trauma, multi-trauma levels. She did all kinds of jobs. She was a very successful woman. I was living on couches, eating out of trash cans. Real strange combinations. Her family really tried to get me to not marry her, you know what I mean? It was like, please don't, conversations from her sister. It was super awkward. I was obviously kind of a wreck. That's okay. I got better eventually, kind of, and then got way worse. It was great. Now, I was at a place in my life, though, where after we got married, I finally had something that I'd never really known, and I was going to test it, which was unconditional love. I'd never really had that. I'd never really had love. Love that some of you have taken for granted every single day for your entire life, that you've ever known that. Some of you took it for granted so much more than you can even comprehend, that somebody loved you and gave up their life for you. Some of you have known that. Some of you have known that in such riches and abundance, it's become a vain thing. It's become ordinary. But I'll tell you what, when you've never known it, when you never knew for sure if the person that was loving you was only loving you to get what they could out of your body or to get what they could out of your mind or out of your blades, you were perpetually stuck in this world called doubt. And doubt is a cruel mistress. It wages a war on the mind, and it leaves people depressed, sorrowful, ambivalent. And that's how I had gone through my life for so long. But here I was sitting next to a woman who said she loved me, but she didn't know who I really was. And that's a dangerous thing to bring into a marriage, is secrets. And I brought a lot of secrets into our marriage that she wasn't quite ready for, because on one side of the equation, Chelsea was her own worst enemy. She had taken her body and worked so hard in academics and as a collegiate soccer player. Her body was broken. She was working nights at the hospital. She ate out constantly. She was, health-wise, a mess. She was struggling with depression and anxiety. When I met her, she was on medical leave from her work because she was struggling so bad. She didn't know what was wrong with her. I didn't know any of this kind of information back then whatsoever. So her and I entered into the marriage with this roller coaster of bioidentical hormones, all of the things that the doctors try to give you to try to nurse you along. And it caused this roller coaster in our marriage, and we did not know how we were going to get through it. But over the course of the first couple years, my life went from being that version Nate to the other man, The man who I was when the sun went down. The man who went and hunted at night. And out of those shadows, I came crawling out to talk to her and began to open up and let out little secrets about who I was, what I'd been through. Would you still love me? And ultimately, that was the question I kept finding myself asking her. Will you still love me after I tell you this? Will you stay with me even if you know what I've done? Will you stay with me even if who I am is a shadow of the man you married? And that woman ever so incredulously labored with me, not really sure of what was going on, confident that something wasn't quite right, but having no frame of reference to put this into. She was seeing these other sides of me, but not knowing what to do with that because it's strange and it's peculiar. And trauma and bitterness and rage, they leave these marks of permanence that scar our souls. And this stuff shows up years and years later. And if we don't have a context for it, people are lost. And that's where we were. Our marriage was on the rocks. Because on one side, that one side of me that wanted so badly for her to love me, the other side of me didn't want anything to do with her because she was a liability. It was a lot more dangerous to wake up in the underground and go out and stalk pedophiles at night if I had a wife and a permanent address. That was where the choosing had to come in my life. Because into this moment, my Father in heaven gave me a gift. He gave my wife and I a child. And now I had to choose, just like my father had to choose, just like his father had to choose. Do we go into the family business and sell my child to my family so I can get the trust fund? Or do we not, and we leave everything behind? And that was my choice. My family's criminal empire is reinforced through compromise. And nothing quite compromises a family system as giving one of your children into the hands of abusers so that you can have trust funds. And that's how my family profiteered for many generations. But I looked at the Word, and I turned to it, and I said, Father, I still believe you are the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that you still can save me as you did him and as you've done to your sons and daughters before me. And if not, then I'd rather die so my child can know freedom than to volunteer to put her in bondage. That was my choice. And you know what? I made that choice 8 years ago. And it started a war with my family. It started a war that has been going on ever since. Because when I went to them and told them the path of freedom is going to come through the confessions of your sins and your secrets and forgiveness, they wanted nothing to do with it. I was naive enough to believe that they could come out of it with me, that they could find the freedom that I was finding, because I began to turn back to the Word. I began to turn back to these natural approaches for healing. The Father gave me the gift of becoming a wilderness mentor and working at 8,000 feet in elevation in the mountains of Colorado. No technology, just the wilderness. And it began to heal me. It began to cure me. I began to drink spring water that came out of the rocks like a savage. It was delicious. I loved it. And I was like drunk on it like a skunk. I was like, this stuff is amazing. You drink this, you get smarter. I'm telling you, it's like brain juice. So I started just smuggling 5-gallon jugs of it home, carrying them back to my wife. And she's like, is this raw water? And I was like, oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah. Drink it. You're going to love it. She would not. She's like, I'll watch you for a while and see how it turns out. I was like, honey, I've been drinking out of funky water stuff since I was a little child. You've been drinking out of tap water like a Nazi for a long time. I'm going to do great. Slowly, I slowed my roll. She saw I didn't get sick. She saw I was sleeping better and I was feeling better, and she's like, all right. She began to drink it with me. Very bold step. This was baby step number 1. If we're going to go over baby steps like Dave Ramsey does for financial freedom, we're going to go to baby steps in nutrition. Fresh water, fundamentals here. Changed our life forever. Changed our life forever, because this perpetual fog that we've been living in, this stupor that was just ever so slightly there all the time, was being manufactured. Dadgummit. These people are super stinking criminal-minded, and they understood if you just slowly titrate your poisons out to the people, you can make them slow and dumb. That's a lot easier to control slow, dumb sheep. I ended up becoming a shepherd, Goats are smart and monsters. Gosh, I want to kill all the goats. Anybody who's had goats, and they get out of the fence every stinking day of your life, I'm telling you, you'll want to murder them, like vigilantly so. But a smart goat is one of the most terrifying things on the face of the earth. And you can't keep them in the fence. And so instead, they just want to dull us all down and make us like stupid, easy-to-control sheep that just baa and follow the leader. But you know what? Fundamentally, we were made to have critical thought. And that's where fresh water came into my life, and I was living like a king. I felt so much better in my life. And it was like, what else is going on out there, right? That was the most dangerous thing. Barbara's written it up here like 15 times. Why? Why? The single most important question Narnia anybody can ever ask. Why? And if you ask that question and you're willing to hold on to your pants, son, you're going to get some answers. And this was at the time where YouTube was like the Wild West. This was before all the filters came in and they just locked everyone down. They're like, you can look for anything you want. We'll let you look at it for a while. And we're like, yes! So I was on a frenzy. I was on every kind of freak show level conspiracy I could dive my head down into to find out what is going on with our food, our water, what is going on. I needed to know. And that's all it took, man. Once I had that insatiable need to know, I was on it, son. And I was tearing down the roads of GMOs. And I was like, honey, we got to talk about transgenics right now. Sit down. She's like, okay, come along with you because I love you. We launched into transgenics and genetically engineered foods and starting to study Monsanto and all of the little tentacles of that demonic empire that was following us everywhere we went. We're like, fine, no GMOs. We're super extremists. She's not as like wired up as I am. She's very dainty and lovely. She's elegant. She looks like she steps out of a Renaissance festival. I'll show you guys a picture in a minute. But she followed me into that, and we stopped eating genetically engineered food. We're like, that's step number 2 for us. We're going to jump down into that train. And you know what? We were like, hey, I fart a whole lot less. This is great. This is great. She was very relieved. She was greatly relieved. Our house suddenly had a lot less funk in our skunks, and it was fantastic. We're like, well, this is awesome. What else is going on out there? So then we started studying petrochemicals. Then we began to study what's going on with all of the toxic additives that are being placed into our food and preservatives. And why is it that they're spraying pig blood on all of our crops? What the heck is going on? I needed to know. So then this launched me down into this entire other road of studying organic horticulture, and homesteading came crawling out of the closet like a beacon of light in the dark, dark night. And I'm like, look at these people. They look so happy. They're eating their raw cow's milk, their eggs. They looked like they had this lifestyle of richness and vibrancy and passion. And they were so sharp and articulate. And they were multifaceted in their capacity to do things. They were skilled. And I was like, what is this little niche of the world I've not even seen? See, we're all stuck in the cityfied world down here outside of Denver, Colorado, where everyone is mostly miserable all the time. And you're like, dadgummit, I hate traffic. That was our world. And we're like, we just want to escape to the mountains. And we became super hardcore preppers at this time. Full disclosure, we got way into it. You know what I'm saying? We're like, I live by DIA, y'all. Like, the Denver airport conspiracy was like numero uno at the time. Jesse Ventura was pumping out the shows, and we were like, oh, man, they are everywhere. The red horse is going to ride. Lucifer is staring at me in the face every time I go to the airport. Like, what is going on here? I'm like, we live in the heart of darkness, honey. This is the capital of the New World Order. I got to tell you about the deep underground military bases. She was drinking out of a straw, and I was the waterfall. I still haven't really told her the whole thing about the family yet, so it was rough going on early on in our marriage. But I tell you what, she hung in there with me, and the more we started applying these principles of going back to this more ancient way of living, we started having this revitalizing in our being. It was as if we were finding our purpose, as if we are finally starting to get a hold of some of the fabric of what we were supposed to make ourselves out of. As if we'd been our entire life formed like a marionette, held on somebody else's puppet strings, unable to navigate the world for ourselves, when suddenly we were given the tools to get to building ourselves once more. And those were the final little building blocks that I was needing in my life to come to a place where I could make that decision to leave the family and have nothing to do with the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead to rather reprove and expose them. And my wife and I sat together, and we made some very dangerous decisions. We made some very intense prayers. And we began to make a decision that we were going to come out of this thing, and we were going to fight against it no matter what happened from here on out. And we would stay with each other. And that unity that began to happen in those formative moments of our marriage became the foundation that has stuck us together ever since. Because my wife had this actual belief in unconditional love. She believed the words of her covenant. Marriage was such a powerful weapon that is given to us. And when husbands and wives truly unite side by side and they wage war on that world of wickedness, they are a force to be reckoned with. They are complementary. They can collude together and come up with strategies that are so outside the box. For example, I used to carry a literal arsenal on my person all the time. I thought I was going to war with multi-generational Luciferians. I was like a walking bomb factory. You shouldn't say that out loud, but I was a walking bomb factory at the time. Anarchist Cookbook did me good, son. Now, I was traveling home with her one night. We had a dog at the time. This is BC, before children came into the picture. And we were driving back home from our parents' house. We stopped kind of near our neighborhood at a gas station. It's like 11 o'clock at night. And I pull up to the farthest away pump so I can get a good view of everything, situational awareness. All those guys who can't turn off the soldiering thing, it never dies for some of us. But I pull up to this pump, and there's two guys parked in a Buick, which is just funky to see. You just don't see lots of Buicks. But one of the guys is laid back flat in his seat, and he's trying to not look like he's looking at the cash register, and the other guy's laid back in the seat just looking at me. And they're fiddling in their crotch, which is funky, right? But I can clearly see one of them has a pistol that he's messing with. And I'm like, oh, they're observing the place. They're spying it out. And so we're sitting there, and I watch the guy load an extended magazine into his pistol. And as this last car pulls away and drives off, the guy looks over at his buddy and nods his head like, oh yeah, oh yeah. And they make a stupid decision to get out of the car. Now, meanwhile, I'm prepared to engage them. And I'm thinking about ballistics. As this is going through my head, I'm like, we're just going to shoot these guys dead. It's going to be over. It's not a big deal. This is all that I'm thinking about, right? I'm like, my wife, my dog are there. It's going to be fine. As they start to go towards the door and open it up, they look over and see me, and they stop. And they stare at me. And I'm looking through one of those advertisement visors that are on top of the gas station. I've got like this window like this. And my eyes are bugged out like 10. And I'm like, go for it. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Waiting. And they're staring at me, and their hands are on their crotch, and my hands on my crotch, but they can't see my crotch. And I'm like, go for it, buddy. Please make my day. And then they just go in, take their hands off their guns, open the door, watching me the whole time. I'm just staring. They're watching me, staring. I'm like, I'm not going to look away. There's like Gerald, that 85-year-old guy with his oxygen tank at the cash register. And I'm like, dadgummit, nobody can leave Gerald, man. These punks are going to gash this guy. So I'm standing there watching them, and the first guy posts up kind of near the register, and the other guy goes way into the back, right? And he's like, just watching. I'm like, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going anywhere. And so I stand there for 5 minutes in this awkward showdown, stare down, just waiting to see what's going to happen next. Finally, they realize that dude's not leaving. So they get back outside, they go into their car, and they sit down, and they both turn around in their seats and just stare at me. And I'm like, all right, I'm okay. I got all night, buddy. The crazy guy's coming out of the closet, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, shh. Suddenly I remember I'm married. Oh, there's that woman. I've got to tell that woman that there's going to be a gunfight. She should get ready with the first aid stuff, just in case. And I go into the car, and I sit down, and I very quickly try to catch her up on the situation and on my plan of action in case so that we can make this firefight successful. And I'm telling her how she needs to get in the driver's seat and prepare to drive away while I engage them as I fire out the window. True story. This is my game plan. I'm like, I got the extended magazine, honey. We're going to do great. She's looking at me, and she's like, or we could just call the police. I never thought of it. Not once did that cross my mind. I'm like, you were raised by weird people, honey. I don't know what home you came from. You do not call the police. fundamentals. She's like, this is when we call the police, honey. This is when we call the police. That's what they're there for. That's their job. Doesn't have to be yours. And I'm like, it's kind of reasonable. I don't call the cops. So she calls the cops. Those guys just continue to stare at me. I continue to stare at them. And eventually, 15 minutes later, police pulls up around the side, and the guys peel out of there, take off, right? And I peel out of there because I don't want to talk to cops, you know what I'm saying? I love y'all. If you're a cop, I love you. I just don't want to talk to you when I'm feisty. So it was in that moment as we began to drive home and decompress that I suddenly realized why the Father gave me this woman who was sitting next to me. Just a little bit of the reason. That she would probably keep me out of a lot of violence. Just fundamental. She would probably keep me from killing more people. That's great. Keep me out of prison, all that stuff. Fantastic. You know, I started looking at her a lot more attracted at that moment. I'm like, you know what? Maybe you're good for me after all. Maybe we can work this thing out. You know, I began to kind of creep my way a little closer to that pretty little lady sitting next to me and think, maybe you're a tough fighter and we're going to get through this thing together. You know what? And ever since that moment, our marriage has been defined by these pockmarked moments where my family, when we decided not to give them our daughter, came after us with a full force, relentless pursuit. And it was crazy, you guys. We had assassins sent after us, people trying to murder my family and I, many different times over the years. We've traveled over 150,000 miles across this country in full-time in an RV for many years. We lived like vagabonds on the run. We literally were migrant workers living on farms, like trading our way for electricity, like, we're going to live down in Florida. They'll never find us here. It was delicious. I got to eat papaya every day, and my daughters grew up in a world where this is normal. It wasn't scary. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't freaky. They just got to go eat papayas and oranges and mangoes and zipper peel tangerines, and they got to live this abundant life because after that moment, we decided to leave that kingdom behind and pursue one of the natural remedies with a relentless fervor. We went after it full force because as much as I wanted to do the homestead thing, as much as I wanted to live that lifestyle, I figured we'd probably die. Like, we're going to starve, honey. I don't know really anything about farming, and if I just learn everything from YouTube, it's probably going to pay for all the mistakes, and we're going to not be able to be successful. So we began to travel the country and stay on different people's farms in this program that was called WOOF. It still exists, WWOOF. Anyways, it's like a work exchange program where you can stay at people's farms or homesteads, and they'll give you a place to stay or power, electricity, and food, and you just work like an animal for them. Or super gentle. They're not always mean. But I began to work by the sweat of my face so that my family could eat bread. And I started in a greenhouse. The farmer was savagely smart to me, I'll tell you what. He knew how to break a man like me. I showed up in full tactical gear, you know, because it's, what else do I got? And he's like, you know where I'm going to take you? Come on. Come on. Took me right to the greenhouse in southern Florida. I'm from Colorado. Dry deserts. High, dry deserts. He takes me to the swamp crotch. He's like, here you go. See this greenhouse? All that green stuff. It's got to come out. I'm like, great. He's like, lots of black widows in there. Be careful. Pieced me out. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this man good. He did me a solid by letting me come here, even though he looked me up on Google and was like, yikes. He let me come down there. I bent over on my hands and knees and began to work my way through fire ants, nemesis of my existence. Fire ants and black widows in colonies of them. Thousands. They have thousands of babies at once. I didn't know this. Thousands of these things, but I believed. I had faith. I'm like, nope. Any poisonous thing gonna sting me? It ain't gonna kill me? No, not a little bit. So I began to wade my way through that, and I began to realize every inch that I crawled through that greenhouse, inch by inch, and collectively took ground and took captivity captive, I was winning. But I felt like I was dying in the synthetic nylon nightmares that I was living in. And I was like, the body armor is not gonna work in this environment. I need deliverance. So I began to start praying, crazy prayers, crazy delusional, I'm dehydrated prayers. Help me, please. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And you know what? The solution came in those sweet, natural fibers. My wife and I had bought a pair of linen sheets. We had to sell our house to afford it, granted. But I bought a pair of linen sheets. And every time I climbed into bed at night, I felt like I climbed inside of a field of blueberries and blossoms and shields of glory. I was like, what is this sweet mercy? What if I wear it during the day? So there in Florida, swamp capital of the world, I began to put on linen and go into these greenhouses, and I felt like a new man. I had a breeze going on in places I hadn't felt any air on in a long time, and it was rejoicing. I was rejoicing. I came out exuberant. I was like, these are simple things, y'all. Like, change your shirt, change your life. I could make a brand off that. It really is a thing, though, because we don't realize it, that, like, you don't know you're kind of always irritated until suddenly you're not. You're like, is this how people feel? Just not ticked all the time? Hey, go figure. It's like a mom who's been breastfeeding for years who suddenly gets a full night of sleep. She's like, wow, stars everywhere. It's like you come out of the darkness and you see this wonderful hope that's available to you. And you know what? It seems so crazy. And I know I sound like a lunatic at this point, but I don't even care. Linen changed my life so fundamentally. It gave me this freedom from chronic pain that I had been living with for so long. I had been living in suffering because I rejected the drugs, but I just lived with suffering. I was like, I guess you just hurt the rest of your life. That's the option. But you know what? As I began to wear these natural fiber clothing, I began to feel my body healing itself, letting go of pain, letting go of disease, letting go of sickness. My clothes would be stained yellow and black and brown in these spots on my body as my skin literally leached out toxins. I was like, what the heck is coming out of me? I don't want it in there anymore. So I went straight up and looked up. I'm like, I got to figure out what's going on in me. Found out I had some parasites. I had some skunks in my trunks. You know what I'm saying? Y'all do too. Y'all be looking at me like, that guy just said that. You do too. There ain't a person sitting here who ain't got a little dark passenger inside you that's just nibbling on your insides. Everybody's got them parasites, and you got to diligently work to get them out. So I prayed to my Father in heaven, help me, help me. Eat the papaya seeds. So I did. I'm like, game on, son. I've got papayas out the door. So I just began to eat. I committed myself to eat the papayas, all the seeds that were in every papaya I ate. Don't do that. Don't do that. But I figure, hey, it's fresh. It's like it's all encapsulated. The Creator made this perfect little thing. This is what I need. So I just began to eat all the papaya seeds. And the farmer saw me on day like 6 of this that I was thinning out fast because it was all going volcanic into a composting toilet. So it's great for the fields and the farms and the soil. But I was like, violent eruptions, continual eruptions. And I was like, oh, but I felt great. But the farmer looked at me and was like, watching me just eat all the seeds and was like, no, son. No. Brought me back from the brink. I still encourage y'all, if you can, get down to southern Florida and just eat the papaya seeds like a maniac. Once a year. A few times a year if you're going to eat questionable meats. But you know what? Those were those little things, those little gems that I needed along my life that the Father began to give me. And coming out of Florida, my family moved up to the North Carolina mountains, and we ended up living on a 1-acre property, and I became a goat shepherd. Remember the murderous goat guy? Yeah, that guy showed up right there. But it was there that someone introduced us to fresh milled flour. It was spelt. It was the first time I ever had it in my life. I realized I'd been eating dead bread my entire life. I was like, what is this? Are you kidding me? There's all these little cures that are hiding just on the fringes of those weird outsiders who are living outside of the camp. Those folks, they've got the cures. And you know what? We began to grind our own grains. And my wife and I were freakishly excited because we had energy and endurance and stamina. And we began to feel so much better. Like we had sustained energy and nourishment. And we began to feel like, wow, what else don't we know about? So it opened up this whole other can of worms that we were like, we want to make this famous to the nations. So we filmed a video, 2 videos in particular, one that was called Becoming a Millenite, because that's what we became, becoming a Millenite. We began to grind the grain, man. I was grinding it by hand. Then we got the electric mill. We highly recommend all of you, if you're going to grind your own grain, don't start with the hand mill. I love you. Don't. People are like, I know, but the power's going to go out and the world's going to end tomorrow. I'm like, and if it doesn't, you're going to never grind your own grain. I'm telling, there's some that are diehards, and they have children and great laborers. But my children and I have been trying to grind peanut butter for days. I've got like that much. It's exhausting. So just saying, electric grain mills are a gift. We love the Wonder Mill or the Nutra Mill. Those are our favorites. Anyways, we filmed these videos. Becoming a linenite was the next one because I love the linen. I'm going to wear this stuff till I die, son, and then I'm going to be resurrected and be given a linen robe. Game on, son. It's linen forever. I like that plan. So that's what I was going for. So we filmed these videos, and we got super passionate about it.
All right. How much?
$30.47. Check this out.
For an entire...
Linen comforter.
Excuse me, Naomi.
Linen comforter. Yep. Linen curtains.
It's okay,
yep.
Naomi.
Don't worry, we found linen tablecloths, the big kind, the heavyweight kind. Not to mention dresses, shirts,
All 100%.
pants. 100%, y'all. Everything you're looking at, except for the spatula. Shocker. Even hand-embroidered beautiful things. Look at this.
Save you all some serious pocketbook money. If you're trying to find natural fiber clothing, the thrift stores are a great place. Barbara's standing here repping that beautiful outfit that she had on, pointing out the thrift store find that she scored. It's a treasure. It's a treasure hunt you were all made to go on. And when you find these natural fiber garments at a thrift store, you find gold, son, because they're all disregarded. People are like, whatever. It's got a little hole in it, a button missing. My wife and I started invading the Goodwill outlet stores where you pay by the pound. And we were dragging out baskets full of it, like, suckers. And we were just filling up our RV, straight up, filling the thing up, floor to ceiling. We're like, we got to get this stuff out of here. We got way too much. Getting real carried away. And we're like, what are we going to do? We're like, we should send it to people. We should start sending this to those that don't have it, because there's some deserts of natural fibers out there in America and Canada and all over the world. And so we started something called the Linen Railroad. We'd chug along in our little RV. Eventually we got a sticker on the side of the bus, and we would raid Mitzrayim. We would raid Egypt of all of their natural fiber garments. We'd pull into a city and just plunder it, wash it all because it raked like death. And then we'd clean it up, and we would package it up, and we'd mail it out to people all over the world. And it started there in that little goat shepherding shack of a spot in my life where the Father gave to my wife and I a purpose together, where we could send and clothe the nations, where we could help to inspire people to live a natural and vibrant life, where they could get rid of these things that have so easily ensnared them and entangled them, these deceptive measures of man. And they could find freedom in simple cures, simple remedies. I wholly and absolutely believe that every answer that we ever need to know is found in His Word, that He has the cures waiting for us and is willing to give it to us if we would cry out to Him for deliverance, cry out to Him for healing, for restoration, and for a purpose. He will give that to you when you invite Him into your life, when you call upon Him. I knew Him as Jesus of Nazareth. I later got to know Him as Yeshua. That changed my perspective on Him, and it helped me to get free from the baggage that I was raised in and get to know Him for who He was. And He began to give my wife and I so much healing and so much restoration. And into that life, we have invited many others onto this journey to come alongside us as they share their testimonies, which are the most powerful weapon that we are given. It says in Revelation 12:11, the enemy, the dragon, the devil of old, is defeated by the blood of the Lamb, the words of our testimony, and not loving our lives when faced with death. And you know what? The vast majority of the world was faced with death just a couple years ago, and they ran to the deceivers to give them symptom management. And they found that in its end was death. But you know what? We have prime opportunities every single day of our life to be a witness to those who are around us that there is life, that there's still simple cures that are available to us that aren't going to cost you side effects, that aren't going to cost you insurance policies, that instead the cures are readily available and they're abounding in the souls and in the bodies of the people that are here, in the wisdom of our ancestors and our elders, and in those brave forerunners who came before us and carved a path to prepare freedom to the captives. And I am one of those who owes a great debt to the people who have made those sacrifices, who are living in a contrarian way, who are laying down their lives for the sake of the great love they have for one another. And you know what? It is that great love that drew me to my Master. It is that great love that drew me to find the beloved people of our Creator. And I thank each and every one of you for being here today, and thank you for the time to get here. You have a great day.